Do you want to know what the best weapon for your build is? Do you want to know what the best build is for you? I've just spent the last week gathering data, and all of that data points to the fact that however you want to decide those two things, your best starting point is this side of the firing range. Let me show you why. I've received a lot of shit for using this side of the firing range in some of my testing, but the arguments against using this side of the firing range are based on old wives' tales, myths, truths, and what's presented as fact is in fact not. And I'm going to address the two major issues that people have with this side of the firing range and show you why, in fact, it is one of the best things that you can use for weapon testing or build testing. The first mistruth or wives' tale is every faction and every archetype has a different health and armor pool, and so using this side of the range is pointless. Now, because this is used as an argument against the way that I calculate damage with average enemy health and armor pools, I wanted to be sure. So I've spent the last week, frame by frame, analysing exactly what the health and armor pools of every single enemy and every single archetype, every single faction is in this game. And this is what I found. The only enemies that perfectly match the firing range are Black Tusk Thrower, Hyena Engineer, and the Outcast Thrower. And the Black Tusk Medic, the Black Tusk Controller, Hyena Thrower, Outcast Support, Hyena Assault, True Sons Assault, Outcast Scorcher, True Sons Engineer, True Sons Immobilizer, Black Tusk Assault, Hyena Controller, Outcast Controller, True Sons Thrower, Black Tusk Drone Operator, Outcast Scorcher, True Sons RPG, everyone of the same types from New York, and even these guys here all share exactly the same health and armor pools as what we see in the firing range. If they wear any of these emblems, they will conform to exactly the health and armor pools that we find in the firing range. The overwhelming majority of enemies that you encounter will have exactly the same health and armor pools, even the True Sons RPG guys. The only variations are weak points and the Hyena guy carries a shield. Other than that, all exactly the same. But if you don't believe me because you've heard something different, then by all means go and confirm it yourself. If you do decide to waste your time and try and confirm it yourself, just remember two things. The first thing is one that I've spoken about before, which is the last bullet principle. The last bullet damage that you do to an enemy, the majority of its damage is wasted, or on average 50% of the last bullet's damage is wasted. In the firing range, it actually tells you how much of that damage that you've output is actually translated to the target. In the open world, it will just tell you what the bullet damage would have been if there was still damage to be done. The second, when confirming armor percentages, is the rollover. The rollover bullet is the bullet that transitions from being armor damage to health damage. I think a lot of people have wondered about this, and I've seen a lot of conflicting information out there. The game calculates the rollover bullet by applying the damage of that bullet to the armor, and whatever leftover damage that there is, as in whatever the bullet damage is minus what was left on the armor, that amount transitions to the health bar, but neither damage to armor nor damage to health applies. So as an example, if you have a weapon, let's say it's an assault rifle, that does 100,000 damage to armor, which includes 8% damage to armor from your gear. The AR does a health hit of 112,000, and that includes 21% damage to health from the assault rifle. Now let's say that you have an enemy with 50,000 armor remaining and 50,000 health behind that. If you hit the armor with a 100,000 hit, you will not kill the enemy. There will be 3,700 left on that enemy, and that's because the 50,000 damage to the armor and the 50,000 remaining transitioned to the health, but it lost the damage to armour and the damage to health did not apply. The bullet value will show on the screen as 96,296, less than either your armour hit or your health hit. And whatever you do, do not use the end screen values. On top of recording enemies that die but you didn't kill, recording environmental destruction as enemies being killed, it will also record overshoot damage as part of your damage dealt. That is the worst possible way that you can do this, and you will get laughably incorrect figures. So the overwhelming majority of enemies that you encounter in the real and open world conform 100% to the shooting range. Now, because they are the vast majority, those that line up perfectly with the ones in the shooting range, I'm just going to call those standard enemies. Let's just have a look at those that don't. And the first cab off the ranks for being different is the rushers. It's exactly the same regardless of faction. A normal rusher or a red rusher will have 1.844 million in health, which is exactly 1/3 less than the standard. This is consistent regardless of veterancy. Both purple and yellow, or veteran and elites, will have 1.844 million in health. A purple will have 1.177 million in armour, or exactly 1/3 that of a standard veteran. And an elite will have 2.355 million, which is double that of a purple, or 1/3 of what a standard elite enemy has. The next is the snipers. The snipers have exactly the same amount of health as what rushers do. The only variation is that they have slightly more armour. 2.355 million for the purple, which is the same as a rusher elite, or 3.533 million for the elite, which is the same as a standard purple. Next to the heavy weapons guys, now outside of the True Sons RPG guys, who do align 100% to the shooting range, these guys across all other factions except True Sons will have 50% more health than a standard enemy, meaning that a red has 4.24 million, as well as the purple and the elite, and again the only variations is the amount of armour that they carry, a purple being 5.3 million and an elite being double that at 10.6 million. In place of heavy weapons, the Black Tusk have proxies, dogs and tanks. There's no red dogs. The purple dog has an 11.3 million armour plate and 5.65 million health behind that. The elite 50% more than that in both the plate and the health case. A heroic tank has no plating, all health. It is 8.2 million for the red tank, 12.3 for the veteran, and 16.4 for the elite. If you're not sure about the difference between armor plate, health, and what damage they take, then I suggest you watch this old video of mine about armor plates specifically. But in that video, I did make a mistake. In it, I said that tanks, let's call them chungers just to avoid any confusion, but in it, I did say that elite chungers had less health, or HP, in their limb plating than what they do in their torso or their head. After further investigation, every single elite chunga has exactly the same amount of HP in all of its plating, 11.3 million, and behind that sits 5.6 million in health. The only variation is the Riker's nailgun chunga, which has 5.65 million per plate, the same as the health that sits behind it, but the variation is that it is 28.25 million for a shield that sits in front of all of that. Oh, and if you are wondering, in Mission Rogues, 27.1 million in armour and the same health as a heavy weapons archetype. And the painful quadcopters, around 120 million in health. Now when you know exactly what the health and the armour ratios are for each of the enemies, it's very easy to work out what the average enemy value is for any given mission. Around Federal Bunker, and this is a very rusher heavy mission, 28 total rushes for the mission, but the total of 94 enemies meant that this mission had a total armor percentage of just 32.5%. So 67.5% of the damage done in this mission is health damage, and that is assuming that you take the most direct route to the chunga and the named enemy at the end's health, destroying only one plate with every one of your bullets. I did Lincoln Memorial. This one had a slightly higher armor percentage at just 35.7%. And this is assuming that on the 2 grenade throwing named enemies, that you don't hit any plates whatsoever, destroy the weak point, and do nothing but damage directly to their health. And then I ran an invaded mission, and I did it twice because I was testing something else at the time, but I got different results each time. In the first run, only 25.5% of all the damage done was armor damage, and in the second run, only 18.44%. And again, this is assuming that you're taking the quickest route to get to the health behind both the chungas and the dogs as well. I then ran some control points. Obviously control points are much more weighted towards elite enemies and therefore have a higher armor percentage. I ran 2 hyena control points. The first one ended up being 65% armor, and the second control point 66.5%. And anybody who's a regular of this channel, a subscriber to the channel, would know that the results that I've achieved here are very, very similar to the ones that I put out almost a year ago in this video, where I collected statistics from every single mission, both Washington and New York, and to be sure about them, I collected it 3 times over. And if you're a regular to the channel, you would know that I wouldn't be happy with just a very small sample size, so I decided to do it all again. I even roped in another content creator, Dispatch, to help me with the data collection. Every mission, every control point, to validate all of the data and give you exactly what it looks like for the average enemy. So now that all the tallying is done and all the research complete, a heroic solo mission, on average, will have 2/3 health, 1/3 armor. A heroic solo control point will have 1/3 health, 2/3 armor. The average enemy in a solo mission will have 4.8 million total health points, less than a standard purple enemy. And at a solo control point, the average health points or hit points will be 8 million. The breakdown for a solo mission: 61% normal, 24% veteran, 13% elite, and 2% named. And for a control point, almost a flip of that: 11% normal, 22.5% veteran, 60% elite, and 6.5% named. Now when you factor in that there is 1/3 the number of enemies at a control point that there are in a mission, when you factor in all of the elements that increase health within a mission, like the spice ingested by Hyena's Russia that increases its health by 50%, or a Riker's leader being on the battlefield increasing every enemy's health by 100%. When you factor in that Black Tusks are the most health heavy enemies in the game, and they're the only enemies that you will face at Legendary. Some Black Tusk missions had a percentage of only 12.5% armor, and that every piece of environmental damage that you're asked to do by the game is almost exclusively health damage. All of this points to the fact that health damage is the most important sort of impact damage in the game. And why do I care so much? It's because impact multipliers, things like damage to armor, damage to health, damage to targets out of cover, are the most important and powerful multipliers when it comes to working out DPS, especially when you're comparing something like an assault rifle to an SMG. Thankfully, these results don't vary very much at all from the ones that I posted almost a year ago, providing further evidence to support my calculations that include impact damage. But now I can get even more accurate, and I'll do so after the next PTS and drop of TU20, but more importantly for you and the firing range. When you're over this side of the range, if you want to replicate missions, then set the firing range to easy. If you want to replicate control points, set the firing range to hard. And if you're like me and you don't change your build between control points and missions, and you're looking for the best of both worlds, set the firing range to medium. I have no doubt that that's why the devs have put this here and why it is in the ratios that it is. And that it is a microcosm of what we can actually expect to find in real-world gameplay. So to those who have attempted to use this as a means to discredit the work that I've done, once again, I respectfully disagree. In the next video, I'll give you results for group play and legendary missions, and I will also dispel another myth about the AoE side of the firing range. But if you appreciate the over 1 week's worth of solid work that's gone into what is 15 minutes worth of video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more accurate stuff in regards to this game that we love, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. Fog out.